Welcome back to Simply Trade Tips with Renee Julie. Julie Parks. How you doing, Jules?
I am great. How are you, Renee?
It's wonderful. We're having a special episode today for Halloween. It's not our regularly scheduled episode. So this is exciting for Julie and I. And so we're still going to leave you with an FIO, and we're still going to do this in a very short period of time, less than 10 minutes. So Jules, what are we going to talk about? We know we're going to talk about Halloween, but what exactly should we talk about?
We should tell scary compliant stories, Renee. You want me to go first?
Yes, please. I know you have
Scary
good ones.
All right. So we'll talk first about skeletons in the supply chain closets. So the theme here is I was at a company that purchased tooling from overseas, imported that material, and then shipped it to Canada for use in a production line. The order was placed with a domestic supplier, and that domestic supplier then placed their order with the foreign company that then shipped the material to the United States. Where the problem occurred was this company I was working for was the importer of record. And they didn't really have right to make entry. And they were making entry on a lower cost of the stamping because they were using the transfer price between the related parties as opposed to the price that they paid to the U.S. supplier. So very large court case. I then hired into this amazing company. And this is one of the first problems that they wanted me to solve. Pretty scary. The way that there had been many meetings that had occurred. And bottom line, I ended up looking at this and going, I think it's an importer record issue because we're using for sale and don't really want to use for sale. It's an importer record issue. And then we had to roll out a practice where this company would not be the importer of record if we were not on the order, on the international order. So this goes back to some of the CT-PAT stuff, but it was a very simple, solution, but it was scary in that folks in the supply chain were ready to kind of pull out their pitchforks and let the air out of my tires. Because I had joined at a time where they'd been working on this for quite a while to try to resolve in the company. So we did roll things out. It was very painful for the buying department because it was a very big shift in how they were buying material, I think for the better. Renee, I know you've had such an interesting past with regard to many different things, customs. I've learned a lot from you. What's your scary story?
Well, one specifically, I'm going to call it Nightmare on Audit Street. And I was working for an exporter. Actually, they were both importer, exporter. And what happened is we got a letter from customs that we were going to be under a focused assessment. And we're like, okay. Fortunately, we had submitted a prior disclosure prior to receiving that letter. So if our audience knows this, when you submit a prior disclosure, you protect yourself from penalties, not necessarily duties, taxes, and interest and fees, but you can protect yourself from penalties. So we had kind of an idea that we were going to be under a focused assessment. So we submitted a disclosure. Well, that good for us. We were able to protect ourselves in some of the compliance areas. However, customs came in and there's so many scary stories in this, but the audit lasted like 7 years. But here's the scariest story. When they came back to us and they said, we're going to audit basically your audit. And they audited our prior disclosure, which is not completely accurate. And so the takeaway from this is if you're in a situation, and this could be happening with all this tariff stacking and things that are going on, I suspect there's going to be a lot of errors, coming in the future, not necessarily because the importer wasn't taking reasonable care, but it's just a crazy environment, right? And you do post-summary corrections, or maybe you do submit a prior disclosure, take the time to make sure that your disclosure is 100% accurate, right? So we were in the middle of 2 audits. We had the original focused assessment, so we're being audited by customs with all our areas because with a focused assessment, it's the compliance program audit. And then we were also being audited with our prior disclosure. So it was like double audit nightmare, right? Maybe that's what I should have called it. And double audit nightmare. So anyway, just take away that you want to make sure anything that you submit to customs, and especially a prior disclosure, is accurate. So that's one of my scary stories.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Even if the disclosure might have been written on the outside, right?
Yes,
You have the responsibility internally to kind of review that. So quality check the work. Hey, so Renee,
quality.
why don't we move into like a lightning round? It's Halloween. Let's have some fun. Let's do some trick or treating. All right. So I'm thinking that we do trick or treat, fact or fiction, and we kind of list the common beliefs from a compliance perspective, and ask the audience and ourselves really if it's true or a myth or a trick or a treat. So we'll go with the aspect where the fact, if it's a fact, then it's a treat. And if it's fiction, then it's a trick, right? Uh,
Exact thing.
so maybe let's start with Renee, I'll pepper you with.
Okay.
So, can CBP review your general ledger in a focused assessment environment? Like it seems kind of strange, right? Would they go back to your
Yeah,
general? Is that a
it
tricker?
seems like I'm gonna say that's a treat.
Mm. So it's true then.
It's true.
I feel like you've had some experience with that, huh?
I've had some experience with that in that same audit. So you think that customs might be limited to certain documents or data? Not necessarily. It's pretty broad. So I was in a situation where we actually just sat in a room and looked at our general ledger with them. It was very exciting, very scary.
Very scary.
So yeah, that's a treat, and not in a good treat way.
Yeah. Do you want me to take the
Okay,
next one?
Jules.
I could do that, or you
Yeah,
can
let
ask
me
me. Okay.
I got one for you. How about this? If your quantities vary upon receipt, you do not need to reconcile your quantity
Ooh,
with with your customs documents or customs entry.
so I'd say that's a trick because quantity is kind of, they kind of say like quantity is a statistical item, but generally quantity is related to value. So generally it's a trick, especially when you find that money changes hands because of those quantity differences. If you find that the quantity in your company might not, money doesn't change hands on, if it's under a certain amount or something like that, you want to consider that, but you really want to true up against the true accounting value because that ends up being amortized with whatever your piece price is or was on your import. So I
Yeah,
think
and don't forget if you have overages, you want or definitely overages and shortages, you need to report that to CBP. You need to do a post summary correction.
Mhm, that's correct. All
Thank you.
right, Renee, your turn. Trick or treat. As an importer, my broker is responsible for my record keeping exclusively.
Simply, I'm going to say a trick. That's a trick. So those of you, some of our listeners know, but there are separate record keeping penalty statutes. So it's customs takes this very seriously, and so the importer does have a responsibility to maintain their records. For how long, Jewel?
For the importer retains records for 5 years.
Uh,
Yeah.
all right. So that's
Sometimes
our.
longer if it's ITAR and there's an OGA
Oh,
involved. There's all these extra record keeping requirements that an OGA might add.
that's true. Thank you. Thanks for adding that. Good point. Okay, you're up, Jewel. Trick or treat. A parts database sent by the importer to the broker is a strong component of any compliance program.
I think this is a treat. I think this is true. I think it's really nice to have your parts on file with a broker. They can actually overview a document that might come in. So, for example, if a document has an outdated tariff number on it, if their parts database is updated, they can use the tariff number that's on file. They can use that parts database in a number of different ways too. We found so if other government agency data needs to be submitted, it can reside in that database. It's a good overcheck. It's a good kind of a cross reference at the time of entry, which does save you some time on the back end. If the broker is kind of referring to you, hey, there's an anomaly. The documents say X and the database says Y. Which one do you want me to use? So they can either refer that
Yeah.
to you or you can put a rule in place. But we like that, and so do brokers.
And your yeah, like you said, I mean, your broker can upload it and there's no typographical errors. So we recommend that. So let's go into our FIO.
So I think we're at the era, Renee, where treat is terrifying, right? I think we kind of want to have some fun this Halloween. So I think we want our listeners to figure out what your costume is going to be and just take some time because I know Halloween sometimes comes up and it creeps up upon us, especially if it's on the weekdays. But take an opportunity to kind of figure out what you're going to be. I know Jeremy and I are going to a couple's Halloween party, and not to give things away, but he's going to be Colonel Sanders, and I'm going to be.
My God. Guess what I'm going to be? This is Daphne.
I love it. Renee.
Have a great, happy Halloween, everybody.
Your dog needs to be Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, good point. Vinny will be Scooby-Doo. All right. Thank you for listening. Get onto our community. And thanks, Jewel. Awesome. Happy Halloween.